Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jordan and this is the start of yet another reading vlog. I am very excited about this one. Not because it's a super original or creative concept or anything, I'm just very excited for the books that I'm about to read. So what this is I'm reading books that have been recommended by my local bookstore. And where I got this idea is I went to my local bookstore a few months ago, and like a lot of bookstores, they have like recommendation cards on their shelves where employees write which books they would recommend to customers. That's definitely not unique to this bookstore. I know almost every bookstore does something like this, even like Barnes and Noble, the big chains. And I always think it's fun to look at those recommendation cards and see what is being recommended. But what I noticed about my local bookstore when I was there is they were recommending a ton of books that I had never heard of before. And I consider myself fairly well versed in the bookish internet. Even if I don't read all of the most popular books or read all of the most popular genres, I still generally know, the most talked about titles. And I start to recognize and pick out book titles and book covers and things like that. But there were just so many recommendations in this store that I had never heard about, even in the genres that I do love and know the most about. So I thought it would be really fun to take some of these employee recommendations for the books that I've never heard of and see if I can trust their recommendations going forward. I absolutely love finding underhyped books and books that people aren't already talking about on the bookish internet, and I feel like this is a great way to do that. And so I'm really hoping that I love this first batch of books and can continue doing this in the future and bringing some beloved books from, my local community and putting them out into the internet and hopefully raising some hype for books that wouldn't otherwise get it. So the books that I am reading in this video in particular, I picked up a few weeks ago. I did a vlog for the shopping trip in case you're interested in watching. And I also did a haul in that video where I talked about these three books, and I said that they were related and I was using them for a video, but I didn't say what the theme was, and I had you guys guess and nobody really guessed it. But yeah, this is the idea, is these are employee recommendations from my local bookstore. And this particular grouping of books all happen to be like weird thriller horror type books, and that wasn't really on purpose until I ended up with these three books and was like, oh wow, these are all weird thrillers. So maybe next time I'll choose a different genre, but I was really intrigued to read these books because I feel like weird thriller horror books are maybe kind of hard to recommend because they're such a specific niche taste. I think everyone kind of likes something a little bit different in their thriller and horror, especially if you're verging on weird stuff. But let's just go ahead and get into the books that I will be reading. So the first book that I grabbed is probably the one that I am the most intrigued and excited about. It's called Subcutanean by Erin A. Reed, and specifically this is Subcutanean 36619 because this is an interesting type of book that I've never heard of before. But on the back it says, this is a special subcutanean made for traditional retailers. The original book is a permutational novel that changes each time it's printed. This is seed 36619. So apparently this is a book that, like it said, changes every time it's printed. I don't know if that means the story changes or something in the formatting changes or what. But after I finish this, I am definitely looking into what changes in each book. Do I want additional copies? I have to look into what this means and what it means for like recommending you purchase this book. The general synopsis of this book, as far as I understand, it's about these couple of boys who must be at like a boarding school, and they find a secret basement in one of the buildings, and basically the basement never ends. And so I'm guessing they have to figure out what's going on and possibly escape from this basement. It sounds a little bit science fiction-y, and science fiction-y thrillers are my favorite type of thrillers probably. I can see this being very much up my alley. And the recommendation from my bookstore says it was recommended by the employee named Danica. Says the infinite self-replicating corridors of the basement below Orion and Nico's college housing is a perfect setting for the psychological drama. Creepy, twisty, full of blurred lines between reality and illusion, reminiscent of House of Leaves. Lambda Award 2021 finalist. The House of Leaves thing kind of scares me and intimidates me because that's a book that I have no plans on reading. I hear it's extremely confusing, but this is way smaller than the House of Leaves book. This is like around 200 pages, and so I'm just so excited to dive into this and see what it's all about. The second book that I picked up is a little bit more of a standard mystery thriller. It's called Madam by Phoebe Wynn. From what I understand, this follows a woman who becomes a teacher at this boarding school. It's in like a remote location. It looks like it's like on top of a cliff, and I'm guessing things start going weird at the school. The recommendation for this book is, it doesn't say who it's recommended by, but it says Rose lands her dream job teaching at a prestigious all-girls school. It isn't long before she realizes something is off about the school and its students. So again, a little bit more of a straightforward mystery thriller as far as I can tell, but the fact that I got an employee recommendation makes me very curious about what happens. And then the last book that I picked up is probably the one that I'm most nervous about enjoying and that I think is the least aligned with my normal tastes. It's called A Touch of Jen by Beth Morgan. I actually really like the cover. Obviously the pink color is really pretty, and then the picture on it is intriguing to say the least. This book's description says a young couple's toxic Instagram crush spins out of control and unleashes a sinister creature in this twisted, cinematic, and viciously funny debut. So as far as I understand, it's like a horror type thriller about like social media, obsessions, and stalking. The recommendation for this book is recommended by Bailey at this bookstore. It says, weird, creepy, and unsettlingly real at first. A Touch of Jen enacts our phone and social media anxieties and obsessions and the line between reality and humanity when everyone is digital. I hated all of the characters and loved the book. So it sounds good. And then when I was checking out at the bookstore, when I was up at like the counter, the employee who was working there said that this book is very weird. So it kind of seems to be mentioning something like paranormal or some kind of creature or something. So I'm not sure where this book is going to go, but the initial premise does sound interesting to me. And I hope that at the very least I can recommend this to people who like weird things in horror books. I don't quite know if that's me yet, but I'm gonna try it and I'm gonna let you know, of course, my thoughts. So those are the 3 books that I'll be reading for this video. Today is a Sunday. It's actually Sunday before Labor Day, so I have tomorrow off of work, so I feel like it's a great day to get started on this reading vlog. I am actually home alone at the moment. My husband took my kids and they headed down to actually my parents' house for the day. He so graciously let me sleep in and get some things taken care of that I wanted to get taken care of around the house. So I have a couple hours here that I'm going to be doing some things, and then I'll be heading over there to hang out with my family. I would love to go ahead and get started on a book. I think I'm gonna start with A Touch of Jen because, again, I'm the most skeptical about it. I kind of want to get it out of the way. I also am currently wearing a pink shirt and I feel like it matches the pink book. Also, I'm wearing pink slippers. Hard to see, but might as well lean into the pink theme and start with this book. So I'd love to at least read this for a little bit this morning and get a little bit of a feel for what this book is about. I also have some video editing to do. This last week was the Thrill to the Weekend readathon, which was just so much fun. I have to edit that vlog. Obviously it will be up before you see this one. So if you haven't already watched it, go ahead and check it out. I will have it linked, but I would love to get that a good chunk of the way through edited so that I can have it ready to upload on Tuesday, which is when I normally upload videos. And then I just have some normal, you know, house cleaning, mom stuff, laundry to get done, or at least to get started before I head out for the rest of the day. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started on that. I will bring you along and I will pop in whenever I have updates on the books that I'm reading, what I think, and if I would take these employee recommendations and recommend them to you. Alright, it's a bit later. I am 45 pages into A Touch of Jen. I actually just got to part 2 of the book. I'm not sure how many parts there are in total, but I figured this was a good update point. It's weird so far. It's not like horror weird, it's just like these characters are very weird. So what's going on is we are following this couple named Remy and Alicia, who are collectively obsessed with this girl named Jen. And Jen is a real person who posts on social media, and basically Remy and Alicia like stalk her social media and talk about her photos together and will like send each other her most recent updates and talk about her, and they'll actually even like play out these fantasies together where Alicia will act like Jen, and it's just very weird that they both have this obsession with her, and I'm not really sure why. She seems like a normal person. At first I thought she was like a celebrity or something, but she appears to be someone that Remy used to know like in real life and is still somewhat in their life and their circles. So I'm very curious to see where this is going. That's really all that's happened so far. I probably won't share too much more of what happens after this because I obviously don't want to spoil it, but that's the basic setup of the book, and it's very weird. The way it's written kind of makes you feel like something else or something weird is gonna happen in the future. You just obviously don't know what. So I'm curious. The first 45 pages read pretty quickly, so I'm hoping that I can get through this book pretty quickly as well. It is like 12:30 p.m. right now, so I am going to go ahead and get ready to leave the house. Gonna go to my parents, like I said I was going to, and just hang out with my family for the rest of the day. So I don't know if I'll get any more reading done today, but obviously the next time that I do get some reading done, maybe finish the book, I will be on here to update with my thoughts on the book and whether I would recommend it to fans of thriller, horror, weird types of books. All right, you guys, I have a little bit more of an update. It's been a couple days since I last updated, and I'm getting through this book really slowly. I am on page like 150, I think. I just started part 3 of this book, and it's extremely boring. And that's why it's taking me so long to get through it. I am not really sure what is going to classify this book as a horror. So far, it's just a boring contemporary about, again, these two people who are obsessed with this other girl and basically what they're doing. There's nothing spooky about it. There's nothing interesting about it. I don't know where it's going. So I thought I would just update and say that since I'm about at the halfway point. I'm gonna finish it because I'm curious. I feel like it has to go somewhere weird sometime soon here. I'm just not sure when. Oh boy. All right. I have finished A Touch of Jen, and I absolutely hated it. Part of me feels terrible saying that because I am not someone who has ever written a book. I don't plan to ever write a book, but I can seriously respect the time and effort and everything that it takes to write a book. However, I feel like this particular book was a huge waste of my time. Let me explain a little bit and explain who I might recommend this to. So last time I updated, I was about halfway through this book and I was extremely bored. Basically nothing had happened. And right after that update, just around or past halfway in the book, a sort of twist happens, but it wasn't a normal twist in that normally in books, when you have a twist, it's like a shock, obviously. It's like one sentence that you read and you're like, whoa, okay, that changes things. This book, it took me like 3 pages to even understand what changed in the book, or for me to be like, oh wait, did that just happen? Is that the twist that we're going with? And it was, but it was like, it didn't give me the shock that I feel like a twist is the whole point of a twist. So that I hated. And then after that point, the book goes in a very weird direction, and it's definitely a very specific type of weird that you either love or you hate. I hated it. To me, it made no sense. It was not realistic. It was just nonsensical, and I hated everything about it. And the very last quarter of the book was not boring, I'll give it that, but it was so weird and out there, I just can't do it. So that brings me to who would I recommend this book to? Definitely not people who like likable characters or quote-unquote normal mystery thrillers. I haven't read a lot of horror, so unfortunately I can't say whether this is a good horror book. I've heard a lot of people who read horror on BookTube call horror books boring before, so it's very possible that this does fall well within the horror genre. I'm just not experienced enough to know about that, but I wouldn't recommend it to people who like thrillers. I would not recommend it to people who like realistic things. And I don't know if it's a spoiler to say that or what. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really say anything in the synopsis either about what this book is actually about. But I feel like as someone who doesn't like, I guess I'm just gonna say paranormal stuff, I would not even go into this book expecting to like it if I knew that it had a somewhat paranormal aspect and that's where the book was going. So that's what I'm gonna say about it. I might recommend it to somebody who liked the book Leave the World Behind by Rumaan Alam. I read that book pretty recently and that also bored me nearly to death, and that book is not very explained or anything, so I guess if you like being slowly confused, this might be the book for you. And otherwise, just people who really do like weird, quote-unquote weird books. It's definitely unlike anything I've ever read before. I am sure there are people who will love this book. I know there are people who are, because I've seen on Goodreads people give this 4 5-star reviews and just rave about it, but I'm giving it 1 star. That's all I have to say about it. I'm going to try to figure out what to do with this book. Unfortunately, I really like the color of the spine, but I just don't think I can keep a book that I rated 1 star on my bookshelves. So I have to figure out what to do with this. But moving right along, going to go into the rest of this video, obviously hoping for better results. I have started, just barely, I've started Madam by Phoebe Wynne. I'm only about 20 pages into it, so really not far at all, but so far this is giving me much more normal thriller vibes. It's reading like a normal novel. Things are happening already. Again, this is about a woman who is a teacher and she gets a job offer to this private boarding school for girls. And it turns out that she's the first new teacher at this school that's been hired within like the last decade. They haven't hired anyone new in the last decade. And yet they, for some reason, have hired her. She's a little skeptical because it seemed a little too good to be true, a little bit too easy to get this job. And so we will see what that means for her and how that turns out for her as I get a little bit further into this book. I am hoping that I get through this book faster than I got through A Touch of Jen. That book took me like over a week to get through, which for me is very slow, and it's not even that long of a book. I guess it put me into a little bit of a slump, so I hope that this book can help me get out of that. And I'm saving the one that I have the highest hopes for and that I'm the most excited about for last, and I really hope that's a good decision, so I'll be back with an update when I have it. Let's all cross all of our fingers for something better than a 1 star. Alright, quick update. I am, I think, 96 pages into Madam, and I just wanted to come on to say I'm liking it. It is giving me much more of like a normal mystery thriller vibe, and I feel like that's what I was missing from the first book. So I'm glad that this is giving me that, and I'm very excited to find out more. I think I've already given the whole synopsis of this book. Not a ton more has happened. We are just finding out more and more about this school and its history, and our main character is just having more and more weird things happen to her that make her question whether or not this teaching opportunity was actually a good thing for her or not, or if she's, you know, in danger. So I'm liking it. It's a little bit slow and atmospheric, but I think I could have guessed that based on the cover and the description. It's actually so far kind of reminding me of The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. I don't know why. I think it's the main character just being in this like too good to be true job situation in kind of a remote location in this amazing place. Like the school is very grand and impressive, and in The Turn of the Key it's this nanny who's in this really high-tech, really nice house, and they both have to do with our main character interacting with like teenagers and children. So I think for all of those reasons they're kind of relating in my head, and I loved The Turn of the Key, so I'm really hoping that this book continues to have like twists and turns like that book so that I end up loving this one too. So I'm gonna get back to reading it and hopefully at the end can tell you that I really loved it. guys, let's talk about this book. I have finished it. Once again, it took me an extremely long time to finish this book. It took me like a week, which again is very slow for me, especially for a book that's only like less than 350 pages. It just felt like it took forever. And that's because this book was also very slow. Yes, it is like a creepy kind of atmosphere, which I do think some people would like and do like in their mysteries, and I do too, but I still need the plot to have some action, some drive, you know, something pushing it forward. And this just didn't have that for me. I wasn't all that invested in like our main character and her figuring out what was going on. I did find what was going on with the school somewhat interesting, but it was also a bit disturbing, and so that makes it hard to really fully enjoy it. And I just thought the path to get there was too slow, too indirect. So unfortunately, I'm gonna give this book 2 stars. So we are not off to a good start at all in this video, and by start I mean over half, because I only have 1 book left, and so I'm really hoping that this book is my saving grace. It sounds like the book that is the most up my alley, so I hope that I'm right in that. So I'm gonna go ahead and start reading Subcutanean right now. I will let you know when I know more about what this is about and the style and the format of the book and everything like that. This book, I'm gonna say it again, should read quickly because it's just over 200 pages. So the plan is to fly through this in the next day or two and to wrap up this video, and man, I hope that this is a good recommendation and that I end up loving this book, because I'm looking for a book that I had never heard of before and that blows me out of the water. So I hope this is it. It was not Madam. It obviously wasn't A Touch of Jen. So we'll see where we land after this, but just wanted to give that somewhat quick update. My gosh, you guys, I had planned on updating you on this book before I finished it, like halfway or whatever, so that I could give a better synopsis and give you like my halfway thoughts and opinions. But I ended up flying through this entire book within a single day, which that in itself is like such a refreshing feeling after the first 2 books for this video dragging on so much. This was the complete opposite in its pacing and it grabbing my attention and me just wanting so bad to finish this book. And now I have to try and sum up my thoughts on it. Let me start by saying all that I think really needs to be said about the synopsis is that it's about 2 friends, these 2 guys who I think are in college. They are roommates who live in the same house, and they discover that their house has this basement that is never ending. And as they're exploring it, it goes into like a parallel universes, alternate realities type story, which I freaking love. That's definitely one of my favorite types of books, and I've been reading kind of a lot of them lately, so I feel like in some aspects what this book does is very on par with a lot of those other books. If you're going purely by plot, I don't think this book is necessarily like leaps and bounds better than like A Dark Matter or Infinite by Brian Freeman or Recursion or popular books like that. But if you like those books, I do think that this is up there in terms of like entertainment, quality, twists and stuff like that. This book does also have LGBTQ elements in it, which is always nice and refreshing to have in like sci-fi books where that's typically not a focus. But what does set this book completely apart from any book that I've ever read, ever, or even heard of, is the permutational novel aspect. So after reading this book and reading a little bit more about what it says in the back of the book, and then reading some reviews on this book, I understand a little bit more about how exactly this works. So basically, this book is Subcutanean 36619. So that's a particular seed of this book. And like it said, I think in the back or the beginning, this particular seed has been replicated multiple times to be sold in bookstores and things like that. And there do seem to be multiple seeds that have that, because looking on Goodreads, it looks like a lot of people have read a lot of different seed numbers, even though they purchased them traditionally like in bookstores and things. So those are all slightly different. And then you can can also, based on the back of this book, because you purchased a physical copy and you own the book, you can send an email to this email address that's in the book and request your own unique seed that nobody else has ever read. And it kind of explains that what is different in the books kind of ranges, where it could be like a word here and there that's changed out, it could be a sentence, or it sounds like it could be a complete scene is changed or removed or added. So it doesn't necessarily change the story as a whole. Like, it seems like you kind of get the same experience, but it also gives some clues in the back of this book saying like, your book did this, which implies that in other books that's different. So it doesn't tell you what the other books do, it just tells you your book did this, so you can assume that's only one variation of that scene or point or whatever. What a cool idea. I don't even know how like an author goes about doing something like that, or how a publisher goes about publishing a book like this. Just from like a logistics standpoint, I think it is super cool. And then not to mention, I love how that parallels like the parallel universes trope. Like the characters in this book, how all of the different alternate realities they're kind of interacting with, their lives in those realities are slightly different. Usually they're mostly the same and they end up in like the same place in life, but little things here and there are changed in their life. Whereas readers of this book are generally getting the same story, but little things here and there are changed too. So that reflection and that like immersiveness of having like parallel realities of books, God, that's just so cool. And I'm sure that this is not the first book like this ever. This was published in 2020, so I would imagine that like a permutational novel is something that has been done before, but I've never heard of it, and so of course I give a lot of credit to this book for like introducing me to that concept, and I am definitely going to be doing some research about other permutational novels. It's just the coolest idea to me. I love it. I love what it symbolizes. I love what it makes you like think about. I love that it makes you want to reread this book but read the other versions so that you can see like what's different from your story. I also think this would be a really cool book for a book club if all of the people reading the book could get their hands on different seeds. Because how cool would that be to still be able to discuss like the characters and the major themes of the book and the most major plot lines, but then you could also go into like, what did your particular book do for these scenes, and then kind of get to know the differences of all the different seeds without having to read them all. I think, God, that would be so cool. So this book, if you can't tell, was a raging success. I am so glad that I saw the recommendation card and that I took a brief look at the back of the book to find out if it would be something that I would like, and I'm just so glad that I picked it up and I ended up reading it. So if alternate realities, sci-fi is at all your type of thing, highly recommend picking this up. And I would love to know if you get a different seed number if you do end up picking it up. Again, mine is 36619. If you get a different seed number, pop into my DMs and I'd love to talk about what your book did and try to figure out some of the differences. So if it's not clear, I'm going to give this 5 stars. And again, I don't think it's the best like plot book ever necessarily. Like, it didn't do anything that blew me out of the water with the plot, but everything else that I was just gushing about I feel like makes it have to be a 5-star book. So I'm so glad that that lived up to my expectations, and I want to go back and read really quickly those recommendation cards again, because now that I have my final ratings and opinions of all of the 3 books that I read, I would love to go back to the recommendation cards and kind of look at whether I should or shouldn't have known if this would be a book for me. So going into the first book that I read, A Touch of Jen, this says, weird, creepy, and unsettlingly real at first. A Touch of Jen enacts our phone and social media anxieties and obsessions and the line between reality and humanity when everyone is digital. I hated all of the characters and loved the book. So I feel like that recommendation did not accurately describe just how weird this book is. It does say that thing about being realistic at first, obviously implying that things do go into a non-realistic direction, but I just feel like this book will only appeal to a very specific type of reader, and I wouldn't want to just generally recommend it to people knowing that most people are not gonna like this. So I do think that recommendation could have said something a little bit more specific about the book itself and where it goes and what type of reader would actually enjoy this book. But I will say that the lady who checked me out of the bookstore, she did warn me. She told me it was a weird book, and had I not been picking this book up for a video, I might have taken that into consideration and thought, you know, I don't really like super weird books, so maybe it's not for me. Second book, Madam. Rose lands her dream job teaching at a prestigious all-girls school. It isn't long before she realizes something is off about the school and its students. I feel like that's fair. It's kind of more of just a general synopsis of the book and less of a recommendation, like who would like this book, why that person enjoyed it, and why they think other people would enjoy it. I think more of an actual recommendation like that would have been more helpful because, again, this book is very slow and atmospheric, and again, someone going into it expecting something else is probably going to be disappointed. So it's not a bad recommendation card. Obviously, a person can recommend a book however they want, but I feel like it would get to its intended audience a little bit better if it was described a little bit more specifically to the actual tone of the book and not just the fact that things aren't what they seem. And then, what did this one say again? So, Subterranean, the infinite self-replicating corridors of the basement below Orion and Nico's college housing is the perfect setting for this psychological drama. Creepy, twisty, full of blurred lines between reality and illusion, reminiscent of House of Leaves, and an award finalist. I feel like that is pretty accurate. I love that the recommendation says that it's an infinite self-replicating basement, so you kind of know what you're getting into, and it blurs the lines between reality and illusion. And it's very interesting that it compares it to House of Leaves. I have not read House of Leaves, nor do I know if I ever intend to read House of Leaves, but I feel like the way that that book is written also has so much to do with its acclaim, and like it's not just about the story of that book either. Just like this one, it's not just about the plot, it's about what the book is and how it's written and distributed. So I see that parallel, and I feel like it's helpful because anyone who's read House of Leaves, I assume, has a strong opinion on it, you know, whether they really liked that type of kind of confusing, kind of meta mystery, and could apply it to whether or not they would enjoy this book. So I think it's a great recommendation card. I think it's a great book, and I'm so glad I found it. And so then to kind of fully wrap up, where does this leave me? I think I need to continue being pickier with what recommendations I take. I do think that I am honing in more and more on what I actually enjoy in books, and so I think I can start applying that to recommendations because I don't think blanket recommendations are helpful. I think there are very few books that everybody loves. I mean, there are 0 books that everybody loves, but there are very few books where the vast majority of people are gonna like it. Most book recommendations are tailored to certain types of readers. And so I think I just need to go into recommendations understanding that about myself and realizing that if something seems like it could be a risky recommendation, or I kind of just initially get the vibe that it's probably not going to be my type of book, I should trust that and spend more time on the books that I do think I'm really gonna like. And they might not all be winners, of course, but the chances of finding like a new favorite book seem a lot higher. So that is all I have for this video. I'm so glad it took a turn for the better there at the end. If you're still with me, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.